Hello, everyone. It's that Weems guy back for yet another episode. We're recording on August the 10th at 7:55 p.m. Eastern time. And we've been sitting here talking for like 30 minutes already and finally decided we should hit the record button. Uh, because, that's the reason we do this. And joining me tonight are Cecil Burch. How you doing, Cecil?
Good, as always.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Cecil Burch. I teach hand-to-hand and integrated with weapons. Immediate Action Combatives is my traveling gig name, my brand name, and I've been doing martial arts this is my 45th year.
All right. And you just
And
recently...
for some reason, some people pay attention to me. I don't know why.
Yeah. And that's why I keep having you back on the show so I can help. Maybe I'll figure it out. Why do people pay attention to him?
It's a mystery. It's a mystery. We got to plumb the depths of the mystery.
All right, now Cecil, I'm going to help you help yourself.
All right.
Did you not just like quit your actual job and like open a business related to all this stuff that people may need to know about?
Yes, I did. I turned over the family business completely to my brother 11 months ago. Well, technically it was not quite that far, but opened my jiu-jitsu academy 11 months ago, just over 11 months ago. This Monday was 11 months. And so now I do this full time. I don't have to deal with the business suit anymore. I don't have to listen to clients whining about stuff I don't care about anymore. I get to do what I love and teach jiu-jitsu and self-defense literally 6 days a week.
Cecil, that was the part where you were supposed to tell them what the name of your jiu-jitsu academy is and where it's located.
Nobody ever accused me of being a good salesman when it comes to this kind of stuff. I always feel super icky, but Gracie Jiu-Jitsu North Phoenix is the name of the academy. So anybody in Phoenix or anybody traveling through Phoenix and wants to jump in, look us up. You can find us on Google, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu North Phoenix, and everybody's welcome. Come on by. We got loaner D's if you've never done it before. I'd love to try to talk you, proselytize into doing jiu-jitsu. So I'm good.
All right, Guy.
Hey, I'm Guy Schnitzler. Let's see. I'm one of those mysterious people that follow Cecil around. In fact, I'm the only instructor authorized under him to teach his material. But that's on top of me being my own jiu-jitsu black belt through the Carlos Machado jiu-jitsu affiliation. 30 years in law enforcement. 9 with the Charlotte Mecklenburg PD, 21 now with the Federal Air Marshal Service. And as soon as I'm broken right now, and as soon as I get my clearance from my doctors, my retirement packet's going in, and I'm going to open my own gym and teach combatives and jiu-jitsu.
All right. I was in a class one time that had another air marshal in it, and we had a long-running debate as to whether the best nickname for you guys was Sky Pirates or Air Buccaneers. Which one do you prefer?
Well, since I'm on the Weems guy show, Sky Pirate is the best one for us.
Okay.
Sky Pirate.
Yeah. And it may have been you, but it was either you or one of the other air marshals that I know. Like, people ask him what he does for a living. His answer was, "I rehijack planes."
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah.
What was a professional sleep-deprived tourist that rehijacks aircraft. So that's what we do. And I said that in HITS class years ago, and Daryl came up with the Air Buccaneers, and then we were in a class together. I was in a class, one of your classes, and it became Sky Pirate. So I'll answer to either one.
There you go.
So
all right. So this term gets tossed around a good bit. And I don't know that I've ever actually heard a definition for it. And that's combatives. Cecil, what is combatives?
Well, so as soon as I start to give a definition, somebody's going to be mad.
Of course.
Right. The problem with a lot of these is everyone's got their slight interpretation of it. But the way I think about it is combatives is just the actual physical application of hand-to-hand fighting for self-defense. And that can encompass traditional martial arts. It can encompass combat sports. It can encompass gutter fighting or however, eclectic street fighting type stuff. Some people get really in the weeds and are like, oh, what was the one I used to hear? Martial arts is what you do with somebody and combatives is what you do to somebody. And I'm like, no, that's not true. That's not true, because even in the strictest traditional martial arts, you're still trying to do something to somebody. So I think combatives is what the idea of martial arts originally was. We've got some kind of methodology, some techniques, some concepts to allow us to fight another human being when they can do whatever to try to kill us. And we've got to come up with a way to not be killed. And then where it became martial arts was as soon as somebody started to define it as doctrine and said, this is the way. And it's like, okay. And I guess you could say combatives was probably still that original root thing where there's not necessarily a doctrine. There's not necessarily a dogma approach to combatives. So you have some guys who might be approaching it more from a striking perspective. Some people might be approaching it more from like knife, stick, impact weapons. Somebody approaching it from a grappling perspective. Somebody approaching it from, well, this was World War II or World War I hand-to-hand stuff, something like that. But I think the umbrella term combatives is just a good general one for defending yourself against a violent attack with some systematic approach.
Okay.
Okay, for me, it's combatives is an integrated approach to fighting hand-to-hand with or without weapons. So that can mean, like Cecil said, weapons anywhere from a knife. I'm real fond of SAPs and impact and jacks and impact weapons, and then involving the handgun, shotgun, and carbine also.
All right. So I guess that is one of the discussions or offshoots of it to have is at what point when weapons are involved, does it still become combatives? When I say weapon, I mean firearms. Does it still become combatives? Yeah, Dave Spalding's business name was Handgun Combatives.
I would argue that combatives is that as well. Even if you're shooting at another person with full power rifles at 300 yards, I would still argue that that's combatives. I see it more as a much more umbrella term. Whereas I think a lot of people, I think some of the argument with what it means is some people approach it from a much more specific point of view. No, it's only hand to hand. Okay, well, what if the guy's attacking you with a handgun? Is that still combative? Well, yeah, but we only have hand to hand. Well, what if you have a gun on you? Is that not combative still? So I think it's easy, like everything in the training community, right? We all got to argue and be pedantic about, oh no, the term must mean what I say it means. Okay, I guess. But combatives really is fighting. And that's what we're talking about. And it might be organized military fighting. It might be police work in a specific thing, or it might be a private citizen having to defend themselves, but it's all fighting. And so for me, and it's funny, this is why I was always kind of felt kind of like the redheaded stepchild a lot in the early days, because I wasn't necessarily accepted in either the martial art community or the gun community. Because I'd be in the martial art community and I talk about guns and they're like, no, go away. And then I'd be in the gun community and I talk about martial arts and they'd be like, no, get away, I hate you. And I'm like, to me, it was always the same. I never saw it as anything different. And maybe that's because I grew up watching, John Wayne movies and, Wanted Dead or Alive and, Have Gun Will Travel. It's like, yeah, you might shoot somebody or you're going to punch somebody in the face. So I don't know. I always saw it as all one thing.
I can tell you something I learned from John Wayne movies. When he says he's not going to punch you in the mouth, he's actually about to punch you in the mouth.
Exactly. Really, really hard.
Yeah. Because he says somebody ought to punch you in the mouth, but I'm not going to do it. And then he always does it.
He always does it. Exactly. Like hell, I won't.
Well, here's the other thing though, and you're wasting all this time training and all the actual physical fighting techniques, everything, because all you have to do is say, I would just,
Right.
and then you don't have to do anything.
Don't have to do anything.
Because
Yeah.
I'll never get, I wouldn't let anybody take me to the ground.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would not let anybody get. I would not let anybody get that
Guilty.
close to me.
Yeah, I can't say that.
Yeah.
It's but it is it's in the training community. We have all these things where people just go, well, I would just, or I think this. It's like, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in actually doing it. So show me. Show me. A lot of times I'll have students ask me questions. Hey, Cecil, well, what if they do this? I'm like, well, show me. Do it to me right now in real time. Because I might not know the answer. It might be something that I've never dealt with and I probably should figure it out.
Yeah.
And then most of the time it's like, oh, see, this doesn't work. I was teaching, Guy was present, 2010 Mid-Atlantic Training Conference. I was teaching a block on ground fighting. And at the end, there was like, what was it, Guy? I'd say there's about 30, maybe 30 people.
Yeah, it was a big group.
It was a decent group, and it was done. It was at the end of class, and I'd say, "Hey guys, thanks for coming." Blah blah blah. And this one guy who was an Army Special Forces dude, he started off asking some questions, but it turned pretty quickly into basically like, I think what you just taught was crap because of this. And I'm pretty chill. I'm pretty, like, hey, live and let live. You do your own thing. But this guy is saying this while most of the other students who were standing there. So unfortunately, I acted with a little bit less professionalism than I should have. And I basically said, let's go. I will do straight jujitsu and you can do whatever you want. No, we can't do that. You get hurt, something will happen. And I go, I got all these witnesses in front of us. And I said, right, Guy, I told everybody, hey, you guys are all witnesses. I absolve this guy. I will not, I'm not press charges no matter what happens. He can do whatever he wants. You guys are all witnesses. And then I proceeded to beat the crap out of him in a very nice way. I just did straight jujitsu. I never hit him, right? I never hit him, Guy, right?
Nope, he never did. Just tied him up in a knot.
What's that?
You just tied him up in a knot.
I just tied him up and crushed him for about 3 minutes until he basically went, I don't care.
And I was like, he folded his clothes while he was still wearing them.
Yes, pretty much.
He did.
Pretty much with a very, very heavy steam iron. And but it was that thing. He made these assumptions. Even after I taught for 2 hours, he still held on to these assumptions and then was going to try to show what a good fighter he was, a tough guy, and that I didn't know what I was doing. I'm like, if you're going to throw theory out there, then you've got to back it up, right? Oh, all you have to do is shoot from the hip. That's, work for Jelly Bryce. So let's go. Okay, let's go on the range. Let's just pick an arbitrary drill and let's see who shoots better really quickly. But strangely, guys who say that, they seem to come up with excuses why not, that the drill doesn't matter or it doesn't really count, right? But I'm like, no, let's do this. Let's actually, test out what you're going to do. And then we don't have to have, I would just, well, I think if this, I would never. No. And I don't say like I'm so smart or I got all the answers. I don't. I probably only have a few answers, but at least I'm willing to look at the problem and try it. And I try very, very hard to, to never use never or I never use always, right? Because it's always, it depends, but it's just that thing in the, just try it before you start saying, well, if somebody's on top of me, I'll just get up. Okay. Let's see it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's in the firearms world. We can go out and we can run drills and we can look at the
Mhm.
timer and we can make claims from that. But several years ago, there were a group of Atlanta cops that had gotten off duty and had gone to breakfast together. And an argument erupted amongst two guys as to which one was the fastest. And ends up one of them pulls a gun on the other. Of course, they get fired, gets in the papers, gets all that kind of stuff. And I'm sitting there thinking, there was a way to settle this. How about you go outside and have a race? Oh, well, society and the training community tends to frown on us actually going and having gunfights. But you
Mhm.
guys, let's go throw down over here on this mat or on this, whatever. And
Yeah.
you can settle those
Yeah.
theoretical debates pretty
Mhm.
easily.
Yep. And with the last 25 years of advancement in technology and gear, we can actually plug in weapons too and do it and add that in too. And it's like, oh, well, I'll shoot you before you wrestle me. Okay, here's
Okay.
here's
Well,
a
yeah,
Sims
let's
gun.
go.
Here's a
Yeah.
Sims gun. I will stand 7 yards away. Ready?
Yeah.
Go. And
Yeah.
it's easy to test out that kind of stuff. But again, it still is that, no, we can't do that. Why
Yeah.
not? Why not? Just there was
Oh,
a
yeah.
friend of mine, student of mine, he just got his black belt, great guy, Sean. When he first started training with me and Craig, he used to drive around, and he was a shooter, he was a big time shooter. And he would drive around in his car whenever he was going to the range. He always, along with his shooting gear, he always had a couple Sims guns with him. And so anytime anybody anywhere said, well, why are you doing the jiu-jitsu and MMA and stuff, just shooting? And Sean would go, hey, we got fist helmets in the car. We got Sims guns in the car. Let's go test it out. And I said, Sean, all that time, did anybody ever take you up on it? He goes, no, that's why I stopped carrying it around. Because nobody would.
Yeah. And of course, that's one thing too that can be thrown into the conversation right now. Anybody that walks around toting a gun, guess what? You are grappling in a weapons-based environment because there's a gun in any confrontation you're involved in. And whether or not you are legally justified in using that firearm may be of issue, but you are obligated to defend that firearm. And it's a big difference when all of a sudden you realize someone's trying to take your gun when they're on top of you and you
Yeah.
can't just get up.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that we can get all down the weeds of open carry and the like. But and we could really piss off the sub-second draw crowd.
Go.
Yeah.
Which I've already done. So already done that. So
which that's one of the things I'm constantly thinking of when I'm out on my day job, openly carrying a firearm because I'm in uniform, or usually I wear soft young polo and khakis most of the time. And so I got this gun hanging out there. I have to be aware of everything that's going on around me, gun grab situations, all the like. And quite frankly, there are people out there that are not impressed when you draw a firearm, and they may try to take it away from you. And you can look at the statistics of how many people. We'll just go to officers killed in the line of duty. How many of them were killed or wounded with their own firearm? Well, we've got that number. This is a high number, so we need to start wearing draw-proof holsters so that the cops can't get their weapon taken away from them. Well, what that doesn't look at is how many of those cops had their gun in their hands and it was taken away from them and then used on them.
Yep.
That's because you think that you've got a gun in your hand that people aren't going to fight you for it, you're in for a rude awakening.
Well,
For sure.
if see, here's the thing, because this is where some of the training community actually falls down on its own, its own cliches is. So there's some people go, oh, that stuff never happens. You don't have to worry about that. And I produced the gun. No one's ever going to try to stop it or take it away. Except how many times where we see in shooting classes, handgun classes, where they teach disarming. Wait, we're teaching you to be able to disarm and take away a gun from somebody else, which means we're going to teach you to not be scared of it. but everybody else is going to be scared of if I have a gun in my hand. You know, what we say doesn't always match with what we're actually doing and thinking. And it's always funny because I always assume it's me. I always pull off the line from Zoolander. Am I taking crazy pills? Because I feel like I'm the only one seeing this because I hear somebody say something like that. And I'm like, but you say this never happens, but you're not only teaching disarming tactics, you're teaching handgun retention tactics.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't have to. Where's that, you know, the rubber meets the road. And again, you know, one of the things that, you know, I think I'm smart about stuff and I research, and, you know, I know I've been involved in violence. I don't go around talking about, oh, I did this and this. Because most of the time, outside of one particular newspaper article, there's not a lot of proof on it. So I don't say it very much, but I've seen violence. I know what it looks like. I know what bad guys do. But one of the things that William got across was when we talked about that the subset of violent criminal actors. All right, cool. There's a pretty good chance that the guy trying to rob you is just, you know, average criminal, wants to take your money. But there's like 30, what is it, about a third ish? I think that's the best numbers William come up with. It's like a third the violent criminal actors. They have no problem fighting. They have no problem going beyond just trying to rob you if you try to fight back. And it's like, and again, man, I love stealing Tom's lines because he always comes up with great ones. And the best one is, it's not the odds, it's the stakes.
Yeah.
All right, you only have a 33% chance of meeting a violent criminal actor. But when you do, it's going to be really bad. So I don't know. It's really funny to, you know, that we understand that stuff, but then when it comes time for what we're training, we kind of overlook, oh, I just pull this gun out. And they're going to, like you said, with open carry. I don't want to get into that debate, but every open carry guy goes, hey, I show my gun to make the criminal scared.
Yeah. And the William he was referring to is William April.
William April. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Guy, you were a big city cop for 9 years.
Yes.
You ever have an instance where you drew your firearm on someone and they were not impressed?
For that 9 years, that was a regular occurrence in my neighborhood because they've been, well, it was a high crime, low income neighborhood. So yeah, they saw guns by cops. They've been shot, stabbed, and it was just like another day doing business. You know, they look at you and, oh, okay, yeah, you got a gun. So what? And that's when you're a young rookie cop with just academy training at the time, that's a very disconcerting feeling when they're like, yeah, you got a gun. Oh, okay. Well, I start backing up because at that point, what else am I going to do? It's like, okay, I'm not ready to shoot him yet, but I want more distance because he's not scared at all. And yeah, for years, numerous times, they don't care. They've been there, done that, and they're willing to do it again. You know?
Yeah, it's a very, very empty feeling when you are pointing a firearm at someone, giving them commands, and they are not interested in following them, and they're not impressed by the fact that you have a firearm on. And it's like, well, now what do I do? In the academy, the other cadets did what I told them to do in these scenarios. Why is this guy not doing it?
Yeah.
Been there, done that. And they, you know, it's interesting though when other patrol cars come screaming up, slamming on brakes, and another 3 or 4 guys get there that, oh, now they're interested in listening. Yeah. But it's with contempt. You can just tell it in their body language and their face and their voice. Yeah. It's more like, okay, you got me today because your buddy showed up. Yeah. But you know, when you're there waiting on some of that the backup and you don't hear those sirens and it feels like forever. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I had an instance where we were looking for some guys involved in an incident earlier, and I was kind of keeping a check on a location we thought they might show up at. And lo and behold, I go to check that location, and there they are. And it was kind of like a mutual surprise thing. I went looking for them, and I found them. And there they are. And I drew my pistol, and I was justified in drawing my pistol at the moment that I drew it. And I drew to a ready position. I wasn't actually aimed in on anyone, but I drew to a ready position, began issuing verbal commands, and most of the people ran away. One guy looked at me and smiled and started in my direction. And I'm sitting there with this pistol in my hand going, I'm not legally justified to shoot him. And this in my hands right now is a very, very, very bad idea, because I would like to be using my hands for something else.
Mhm.
And all this, you'll never have to speed reholster. Well, I figured out that night. Sometimes getting the gun back in the holster is something you got to do.
Mhm.
Doing that while you're fighting somebody trying to holster in a Safariland 070. Holstering, for those of you not aware, that has 2 snaps on it, not these rotating bells or hoods or auto locking devices or whatever. It's you have to physically snap snaps.
Mhm.
Doing that in the middle of a hands-on situation is a bit of a challenge.
Mhm.
And thankfully, that guy was not committed to hurting me. And thankfully, he was of not sufficient enough physical stature to get me off my feet when me knowing that he was coming after me. And I was able to stop. And thankfully, someone yelled to him in Spanish. I think they told him that I would actually kill him. I'm not exactly sure what they said, but I think they said something along those lines. And he decided to lay down on the ground at the very
Nice.
last moment. And yeah, that instance has stuck out in my mind a lot. It's like, what would have happened if we had actually gotten truly entangled? Because a hand reaching out to fend somebody as I'm going to retention with the pistol in the other, and then trying to get it into the holster and deal with something.
Mhm.
We never got actually truly entangled like what happened in an ACQC class or something like that, which I had never even heard of at that point. Yeah, what would have happened? Yeah,
Well, it's interesting what you said about he wasn't committed
yeah,
enough to do it. The only reason it did not become an entangled fight in a weapons environment was his decision
yeah,
to do it. It wasn't because you necessarily did anything
right.
or you were able to stop him or anything. And that's what I think, that's I think where a lot of people prefer to use the term combatives when they're talking about hand-to-hand stuff that they're teaching versus martial arts, because I think there's this thought process in the martial arts about, oh, it's honor and we're defending our Shaolin temple and whatever. Whereas in combatives, it's more about we're fighting really nasty other people, and we have to assume that they're committed. So all our techniques have to work against that situation. Now, we might never have to use it if we're lucky, if everything goes our way, if we're doing everything right. We don't have to use it, but that's a lot less on us, and it's what the other guy decides. And I find that something that I think we're lacking in the community in getting that idea across to students, in that, yeah, we can do all this stuff. And to me, as a reasonable human being, if a cop points a gun at me, or a private citizen points a gun at me, I'm probably going to go, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to desist in my activities because I don't want to be full of holes. But that's not every human being on this planet, as evidenced by any prison population you ever visit. And trusting to your well-being, trusting in that what the other guy is going to choose is the reasonable decision. I mean, I don't think I've ever met a cop who will use the term reasonable with anybody that they ever interact with. Right. And I think that's interesting because there are a lot of people, oh, this stuff never happens. Well, number one, it does. I don't, Craig, myself, Larry, Chris, Paul, we've never said it happens all the time, but it does happen significantly. And it would happen more, but it doesn't, because the bad guy tends to go, nah, I'm not interested in gladiatorial combat. All I want to do is get paid. I want to get some profit. It's not worth the opportunity. So I'm just going to back away. Or if you're pointing a gun, I'm just going to acquiesce at that point. but it has nothing to do with he's so afraid of me because I'm walking around with a jujitsu shirt, or he's so afraid of me because I got a gun out. It's he just decided that it's probably not worth it. And man, I don't want to base my well-being on rolling the dice on what the other guy's going to do when he sees me react a certain way. That just seems a little odd to me.
To date, all but one guy that I have fought on the job, the physical altercation was them trying to get away and not be put in cuffs. I had one guy that at a certain point in the confrontation, I was legally justified in killing him or using deadly force. Whether he died or not was inconsequential. I was legally justified in using deadly force, and that did not happen, but we ended up in a fight. There was another instance where I had a gun in my hands. I had to holster a gun, and then I had to fight because I'm on the side of the road with this guy who is trying to get into a duffel bag. And I've dealt with enough homeless guys that you don't let them get into there because there's going to be blades in there. It turned out there was like 3 or 4 blades in the bag, and he was trying to get to them. And he looked up trying to unfasten his duffel bag, and he was looking down the barrel of my Glock, me telling him, if you don't do it, don't do it. And he stands up and he takes a boxing stance. There's another instance. I've got a gun in my hands, and now I'm in a physical confrontation. And I ended up, he runs around my truck and starts trying to get through the passenger side door of my truck. And thankfully my doors were locked and he couldn't get in there. So I had to pursue him around the truck. He gave me his back, and it was over at that point. And I just sat on his head till help got there. And your 40 time tends to go down considerably when I'm hanging on your back. And so Guy, what's the difference you see in, people that are just trying to get away from you and that guy that turns around and wants to fight? And, from the private citizen, is anybody going to be trying to get away from them in a parking lot somewhere? Or if it gets the hands on, is it really turning into a fight for our life and our stuff at that point?
It's probably going to be a fight for your life, because your opponent always gets a say, and that's where or gets a vote. That's where a lot of people are disconnected. They think, oh well, as we're saying, I do. No, you don't. If you say that, you haven't done it. You haven't done it on a force with someone actually, even in a simulated scenario, someone trying to beat your head in. You go, if a private citizen is hand to hand with a felon or criminal, convicted or not, at this point, it's probably gonna be a fight for your life. I'm plain clothes now, have been for the last 20 years. If I go about and I get someone jumps me and bugs me, well, I'm 99% of the time I have a gun on me. So even if they don't, I brought a gun into that situation. Now it's a gunfight, and it may just be a regular fight, grappling, them trying to best me so they can get my wallet or phone or whatever. But during that course of the action, while they're trying to fight me to get me to a point where they can rob me or get my property, they find my gun. Now we're fighting over a gun. Even if your gun's holstered and you got a hand on it, you're still fighting over a gun. It becomes our gun. And if you make a poor timing decision and pull it out, say, while you're fighting them, it's definitely our gun. And if you got anybody like Cecil, myself, Paul Sharp, anybody, the myriad of people out there that train, and by training, you get someone who has 6-7 months in of jiu-jitsu, and you pull a gun out, you're going to be grappling over that gun, and it's going to be who's stronger, bigger, faster, meaner. So yeah, it's going to be a deadly force incident for a private citizen, I think.
Yeah.
Unless they've got their own skill level up where they can fight them off hand to hand and get either a dominant position or be able to break contact and get away. But your opponent always gets a say in it.
Yeah. I thinking back to that first situation I described, if that guy had been committed, would I have had to kill him? And then would I have been the cop that was all over the news for shooting a quote unarmed man? Now he would he have been unarmed if he was trying to get my gun? And that's what gets left out a lot of these, the narratives that get formed. The second one, the second scenario I gave you, I know that this guy was going for the blades that were in that bag.
Mhm.
And I know that theoretically, black letter law, I would have, I was fast approaching the line of legal
Mhm.
justification.
Mhm.
But until he actually had those blades out of that bag, and come, it's like, so Cincinnati's kind of having to wait. All right, is he there yet? Is he there yet? Is he there yet?
Mhm.
Yeah, an armed guy up until the point that it wasn't.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, Dean Keller, right? It's a
Yeah.
Dean Keller type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Guy, arguably for a few of those seconds, the murderer was not armed. Right? Went back to his car, got the gun out, stuck the magazine in, racked the action before he started. Up to that point, he was unarmed until he
Yeah.
was really, really well armed.
Right.
And again, people see this stuff, but yet a lot of times it doesn't. I don't know if it's penetrating the brain is not the right answer, but it doesn't resonate in the brain
Yeah.
of like, what do we take away from? Okay, we see this. What do we take away? And I think there's a lot that gets left out in that conversation, just like you're saying,
Mhm.
man, the guy comes out with the blades. It's even if you go to shoot him at that point, is it necessarily going to stop him right away before he drops one of those blades into your skull? Again, this weird hypocrisy or this weird disconnect in the training community. There's not one legitimate firearms instructor that would teach you, all right, come up, shoot. I want you to put one round in the A zone. Cool. You can do that on demand. You're going to stop everybody. You put one round in the A zone, everyone's going to drop to that because you're shooting 45 hardball, right? There's not one legitimate instructor who says that. It's all about, well, you got to shoot till something. So you better able to put 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe you have to do a failure drill, go to the eyeballs. But yet somehow magically, when it's going to become an entangled fight, all I have to do is to shoot him once. And it's a death ray at that point. And he's just going to collapse and it's never going to happen. So I can just shoot him.
Well, since you mentioned 45 and ball, that's the point in the show where Shane Ghost is going to text me and say they all fall to hardball.
Yeah, but I beat him to the punch, though. I beat him to the punch.
Yeah. Being facetious, of course. That's what he would say. Yeah. The shoot 'em once thing. How many times have you guys seen in the grappling scenarios with the sim guns and stuff where the gun gets fouled? When I say fouled, like slide gets knocked out of battery, magazine gets knocked ajar so that it doesn't feed rounds and everything, revolver cylinder get locked up, etc. When we're in this entangled fight, our clean gun becomes a dirty gun really, really, really quickly.
Yep. All the time. Everyone gripes about Craig's simunition guns and ECQC. Oh, they never work. You're always jamming stuff. Except, and I've been the gun gopher in multiple classes, right? Where I'm running, reloading, grabbing this one and doing this one. And then a Sims round gets, messed up inside. So I got to clean out the barrel and I'm running. But we always, after we run them, we always fire a couple rounds to make sure it's working. Guess what? We never have a problem if we're just shooting into space. But all of a sudden, now it's close in and they fall apart. It's like, do you guys not understand that that's what happens to firearms? Now, okay, maybe we can argue that revolvers are slightly and very slightly less likely to have that happen. But man, even you just slow down that cylinder revolving, just slow it down. And you go, oh no, but it's just my shirt. Okay. Okay. Just try that. Guys like myself, Craig, Guy, we teach a very specific retention shooting position. And it's because of that exact thing. We're like, no, you got to have that little bit of thumb pectoral index. Do you get a little standoff? Because in the fight, it's real easy for that gun to roll inboard way more than you thought because you're 100% focused on not getting killed or shot by this other guy. And all of a sudden now you're like, man, I don't know why the gun jammed. I was shooting perfectly. It's like, no, dude, you weren't. I watched you. Here's the video that we took of your force on force event. And it's like, or they're shooting back here from high retention and the slide slams into them. And of course, in the heat of the moment, they don't feel that the slide did that, but they go, oh man, it's a piece of crap. Look at double fed. No, it didn't.
Oh.
It's all about this idea, and all it takes, it literally just takes, put your finger on a slide, and that might slow it down just enough to cause a problem. And we're talking tiny fractions of this kind of stuff. So it's just weird to me that again, it's that disconnect, right? Oh, well, we're in the entanglement. Sims guns and UTM guns are pieces of crap, but I can shoot at range all day if my target's 5 yards away. I never once have an issue with those guns. Well, put 2 and 2 together, dude. There's a reason.
Got what we see all the time. Cops on the range with both hands on the gun in a
click,
close to a perfect stance that some cops get to. The gun functions fine. But then when they get in a real life situation, their gun malfunctions and all when they have a crappy grip or they got something in there. I watched a video of a cop on a traffic stop. The person in the other car jumps out, starts shooting at him, and the cop draws his pistol and starts shooting back, and he had his cell phone and supporting him the whole time, and he's trying to grip the cell phone and the gun at the same time, and of course that's not working well. And then we start to see problems. That translates over to if you're fighting with somebody over your gun in a parking lot.
It does. You can do something as sneaky as I did on one of my ECQC is Craig has a 2-gun grappling Evo where one's on the bottom with the gun on the hand, right hand, left hand, whatever. One has a gun in the muzzle here, the other one's on top, and he has the gun. So my gun's here. And he has the muzzle there. So, if I shoot, I cause a malfunction, right? If he shoots, I cause a malfunction. So I'm there spinning around. I look over, and it's amazing how fast stuff blows through our mind. Because I glance over, I noticed I had his gun like this, had my thumb in the trigger guard. I was over the slide. I'm like, if I just run my thumb back, I fire this gun, and he's got a malfunction weapon. So I waited, it seemed like a couple seconds, probably wasn't even as fast as it's going, but I did that. I looked over, I fired, I waited, let go. And you see him, I still wish I had the video. He rips, as soon as I let go, he rips up. And of course, that gives me the chance to clear his hand off my gun. I hit my 2 and I start at crotch and go from crotch to throat and shoot him, boom, boom, boom. And you see him trying to shove the bullets at me because the gun won't shoot because he doesn't know he had a malfunction. And at the end of the video, when Craig calls break, you see him roll the gun over and look at it like, what the fuck just happened? And in the debrief, he goes, oh, I thought that was your gun that discharged. I said, no, that was yours, that I did it because I looked over and I saw my hand like this. I'm in the trigger guard. I'm like, oh, boom, let go. Having trained, that was my second ECQC, 3rd class with Craig at the time, 2008. And it's like, because I'd been under pressure, been training jiu-jitsu and boxing, it allows me to think under pressure. So I look over there and I'm like, oh. And, so yeah, if you get fouled up with someone and you draw your gun too soon, too late, whatever, and they get a grip on it, again, who's ever bigger, stronger, faster? Or they do the same thing I did, just run the thumb either purposely or accidentally. They don't know they did it. And then they let go to start pounding you. And you draw back to 2 and you're there, click, 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 trying to get something to shoot. Before you know it, or you get so hyper focused on the gun, which I've seen also, is they'll drop down to a turtle-like position on their hands and knees and are trying to clear the gun while people are pounding on them. And it's like, you need to drop the gun and fight. The gun's useless at this point. So so
the Craig he's referring to is Craig Douglas of Shipworks, and he has a class called, everybody calls it ECQC. It's Extreme Close Quarters Concepts.
Yes, that's it.
And it's all of grappling, retention shooting, whatever. Funny thing, scenario I saw in one of those classes, Clark Sparrow, who is a trainer on Sparrow Defense, was fighting one of the Long brothers in a scenario. And Clark became very, very interested in protecting his weapon. And all of a sudden he felt something poking him over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it was, I think it was Sam had drawn his, whatever the little center line knife was, and it was just, you know, tenderizing Clark's back basically. And if that happened in real life, that's that you don't recover from that.
Nope.
And you know, I had a similar scenario, and I did not do well in my ACQC, but I have one where we were able to get a car to do in-car scenarios, and the guy tries to rob me in the car, and I managed to get a shot off and get him and get a solid hit on him. And at that point, I just played keep away with my firearm, because if he can't get my gun, and I stayed on top of him, it was like, I can stay on top of this guy and keep my gun. He grabbed my wrist, and I just stretched my arm out as far away from him as I could. So I can stay here until Craig calls time, because this guy's going to bleed out.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly.
And
But that's really interesting, because you realize you weren't gaming it to then go, hey, Craig, stop the snare, because I shot him once. You already realized that's not necessarily in and of itself going to stop him, but eventually he's going to go all Maddox and bleed out. So you thought, but that's how it probably is more likely to work out in that. But you're not playing the game of, oh, I shot you, game over, because it's not. You don't know. Maybe.
Guy, I would posit that you understood what to do in that situation, because it wasn't the first time that you had been in one of those situations. You know, like I said, you didn't panic.
No. But get comfortable with uncomfortable. Go, Muay Thai, any of the combat sports, jiu-jitsu, judo, wrestling, anything that gives you a living, breathing, thinking opponent who has skills, even if they don't have skills. Like we do in Cecil's class, one of the ones we do is the just get up. So we set the time for 2 minutes, and we'll go there and we'll say, just to stay down. When we tell you to get up from the bottom, get up. And it's like 10 people, one every third or fourth round will eventually make it up. And the a lot of time, I think, with 3 seconds we allow on that? 5 seconds?
I'll count out 1001, 1002, 1003, too late.
I can't get up in 3 seconds without anybody being top of
Okay. All right. So if you're in my class, Lee, I'll adjust it and give you a couple extra seconds.
So at that point, something's popped. I need medical attention already.
That the sad reality is we're all feeling that. All three of us are feeling that.
Oh gosh, my fingers don't work anymore, and that's just so frustrating as it can be. And all right, well, you guys are part of a new organization that is started called the Combatives Association. So tell the audience, what is the Combatives Association and who all's involved, etc.
So the main drivers is Matt Larson, who was the founder of the Modern Army Combatives program, dating back to the mid-90s, and he was the first one in the Army to start seeing the efficacy of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So he brought in some of the guys, started training, I think one of the Ranger battalions is how I think it started. And then from there, it was so successful that, even big Army was like, hey, we need to make this across the board. So he did that. And then one of his students, another black belt, John Valentine, they were talking about it was easy for them in the Army to maintain some standards. Here's some things you're expected to do as a combat soldier. But when you get out of that, you're out of that disciplined environment, how do you do that for everybody else? And so they were looking around of like, well, here's this group of jiu-jitsu guys, and here's this group of shooters, and here's these guys who are really fit. There's all these things, and you'd like to be a certain level at all of those. You don't have to be a champion at any of them, but have a reasonable functional level. But how do you get that across? So they decided to put this association together where there was a standard of, hey, if you want to be graded, if you want to have ranking in this system, I mean, to some extent, it's functioning like a martial art, but it's very vast. It's much more open. There's an expectation that you have to shoot, and you need to show it. You need to show, hey, are you doing USPSA drills? Or not drills, sorry. Shooting in a USPSA match. Are you taking legitimate shooting classes? Did you take a range master instructor development course and you passed it? Okay, that gets plugged into, you have developed some skill. And so they decided to do this Combatives Association, to where there's at least some standard out there, and it's not arbitrary discipline. It's, yeah, you have to you have to agree, hey, I got to do some work, but I'm going to do the work and I'm going to show it. And by kind of being well-rounded and proving that you're doing this stuff, you can get ranking. And I can't remember what the belts are in the system, but you can get up to like black belt. And so when they started doing this, and obviously they're drawing on a lot of the Army guys and ex-Army guys doing this as the backbone. But what was really interesting was that Matt and John started reaching out to other people outside the Army and said, you guys are doing the similar thing. It may be in your own realm, in a smaller area or whatever, but would you be willing to be part of this, in the sense of sort of like this board of overseers, so that it's not one person making a decision, hey, this guy is black belt, but we don't like that guy, so we're not going to belt him. It's more, hey, we all kind of say, what do you think should standards be? How do we judge these things? Who do you think are appropriate to be recognized, kind of thing? So it was me and Craig, and by this point they've added a pretty good number of people. What is it, Guy? We've got, I don't know, there's a ton of people in this board now at this point.
Yeah.
And so the idea is just sort of a clearinghouse of, again, sort of like we talked about what combatives are. It's this umbrella term. Is it hand-to-hand? Sure. Is it shooting? Sure. Is it some level of fitness on some level? Which I hate using that term fitness, because everybody automatically thinks you're trying to make them into a CrossFit champion or a national powerlifting champion or whatever. It's like, no, it's, you got to have a reasonable level of health and vitality just to survive, just to get through your life. And so they have these kind of standards so that people can go, yeah, I'm achieving, and I've got a pathway to getting better. And that's basically what the association is. And there's still constantly talking about what are the standards, what should you do. John just called me a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and he was asking something specific about shooting standards. And I suggested that one of the standards for like getting to high level brown belt, black belt should be you graduate from the range master instructor development, the basic one. Don't worry about advanced, don't worry about master, but you've done, again, Tom's program, there's legitimacy to it because there's tests, you can fail, there's standards that everybody can relate to. And I said, why should you guys reinvent the wheel? Just say, hey, you want to rank in the system? Oh, what have you done? Oh, well, I'm a graduate of range master instructor development class. Cool. You've met a certain standard of shooting. And it's just sort of that look of how we try to give people a pathway to get better at this integration, shooting, fitness, hand-to-hand, medical is part of it, legal understanding. That's all that component of stuff we should be thinking of, whether we're military, cop, private citizen. And that's just sort of the general point of it. Am I missing something, Guy? I feel like I'm not covering something.
See, pistol, carbine, hand-to-hand, strength standards basically, and medical. Those 5 are the main drivers in it. And the belts are gray, green, brown, and black is how it works up. So black belts, like Cecil and I, can promote someone up to their green belt level, but after that, it takes 2 or more black belts to approve someone for brown and black. Basically, it's like you come show us what you can do, and we will rank you accordingly to what you do. It's not like, oh, you come train with us and we'll rank you. No. You go train and then come to us and show us what you've done. So if you're shooting, you've got to show your shooting. You got to show, shooting pistol matches, shooting qualifying courses of fire like the Range Masters or our old tactical pistol course for the FAMs. That would be a real good one to add in. Carbine familiarization and quals. You got to show yourself winning jiu-jitsu matches. You got to show that you can do like stop the bleed or apply your tourniquets and all that. So you come to us, show us what you can do. We're not coming to you. Is the basis of it. So I think that's everything. Yeah.
Okay. You've named some of the people. Who can you think of who else is involved on the board?
Oh my God.
If only we had like a device we could look that up on.
Well, if you go to combatuniversities.com, there's a list of black belt, brown belt, green and gray belts. Matt keeps a database on everybody in their rank who's promoted through Combat University. But that's what they're calling through the association.
All right. So combativeuniversity.com.
Yes, or Combatives Association. Either one to get you there.
No, that's not it. That's a different.
Okay.
That's a different one, guy.
Okay.
Hold
Well,
on.
whoever that is, you're welcome for the hits you just got.
Yeah.
Well, combativesassociation.com for sure.
Yeah, Combatives Association for sure.
Yeah, and then we'll get to that in a minute. Jumping ahead, never mind. So,
but yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of guys. Some of them are people that a lot of people outside don't know.
Yeah.
They've just sort of been like Army guys, like super high level Army guys who are now civilians or whatever. And we know their legitimacy, but they're not out there promoting themselves. But it's Matt Larson, it's Craig, it's myself, Paul Sharp, Guy. Man, at this point there's probably 20 or 25 guys on the board now at this point.
Yes, quite a few.
Yeah, it's a bunch. I'm trying to get to it,
and the web page is not working at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand why that. Oh, you know what it is? Combatuniversity.org. That's what it is.
.org. Okay.
Yeah, it's .org. That's why it wasn't.
There we go. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, well, Cecil, myself, Paul Sharp,
Ben Aubin from Red Beard Combatives.
Yeah, Ben Aubin, Cliff Byerly. Of course, John Valentine. Okay.
Jeremy Horn, UFC, ex-UFC fighter.
Jeff Adams, John Anderson, Jeremy Brown. Okay. Keith Bach,
Adam Scholl.
William Bader. Yeah, Adam Scholl. Yeah. Josh Chambers. Michael
Jerry Wetzel.
Chappelle,
There's a bunch.
Yeah.
And like I said, a lot of them are, through the Army and were high level combatives instructors and stuff in the Army who are now on the civilian side, and that Matt wanted on to go. They understand standards and doing that kind of stuff, and they wanted to be part of it, because I think a lot of it was guys like that were coming out of the Army and they were talking to Matt going, I'd like to maintain this. I enjoy this. This is not just a vocation. It's sort of a lifestyle, and it's something I enjoy. So they wanted a way to continue that education. And I think that was sort of a driver for setting this up in the first place, and then helping the new people who are totally coming in new. Well, where do I start? Should I start shooting? Should I work pistols? Should I work carbine? Should I spend time on the medical side? Should I do jujitsu? Should I do boxing? Should I do Muay Thai? And here's not necessarily the path, but here's a path where you have options. And again, like Guy said, you're not being judged by one person who can play favorites, or you could pay him a little money to do it. You need at least two people in the group to agree, yeah, this guy, yeah, we want this guy to be a black belt. This guy is got it all. So I like that a lot because hell, I don't trust myself and my judgment for that kind of stuff. I haven't promoted a black belt yet, but I've done up to brown belt. And every time I do that, I'm like, man, this is, it's like I stress myself out, give myself an ulcer because you want to uphold the standards for one guy's opinion. But when you have at least a couple, I think there's a better chance that you're maintaining the right path, I think.
Right. I agree.
Well, how much credit are you guys going to give me towards a gray belt by the fact that I was a rookie cop with Forrest Griffin and he put me in a chokehold one time?
Oh, I'll give you a gray belt for that. Guy and I will give you a gray belt for that.
Yeah. How about all that?
Because at least that's something. At least that's a little bit.
All right, because I've got ECQC, I've got Brian Hill's Complete Combative, they taught me how to put somebody in chicken wing in the academy, and Forrest put me in a chokehold. That's my martial arts background right there.
Hell, that's better than most of the people yakking online about stuff. So you're way ahead.
Oh, yes,
so you certainly should qualify for a gray belt. That's for sure.
So I'm sitting there thinking, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I got the firearm stuff covered. I can do the medical. I know the legal. I don't know that I'm ever, if I got to get up off the ground in 3 seconds, I don't know that I can do that.
That's just my standard.
That's arbitrary.
You can go to somebody else and they might take pity on you. I won't, but somebody else might. No, I take that back. I would take pity on you. I wouldn't take pity on Hearn. I would.
I'm going to reveal something here in this show just for you two guys. Like I said, Forrest Griffin and I were rookie cops together. 2001-ish, we were working 2001, somewhere right in there. We were working a University of Georgia football game. And it was the first time the University of Georgia had beaten the University of Tennessee in like 9 years. And there had been all this talk all week about the students were going to take the field, everything else. And so, it's in the student newspaper, what they're planning to do, all this kind of stuff. And so the chief calls us all in and gives us our plan. And I know a lot of people listening are not familiar with the stadium. The west end zone of the stadium back then is where the student section was. And so there's hedges around the football field at the University of Georgia. What most people don't realize, that's why they call it between the hedges, is that there's a chain link fence in the hedges. And we were very concerned that we were going to get crushed against those fences and get people killed. That actually had 2 people killed at a University of Wisconsin football game years ago in crowd crush. And so the plan was, those of us that were going to be on the field, we were going to form up along the back of the end zone in the west end zone area. And we were going to make a show of force. But if they actually started trying to come on the field, we were not going to fight them at the hedges because we did not want to have that crush. And the chain was like, we'll let them have the field. We were going to back off, as far as we needed to back off to let them have the field. And then we were going to open up the gates and start pushing them out. Okay, so who cares if they get on the field? We don't want anybody to die over this. Well, what was not anticipated was that people were going to take the field from 360 degrees. And a mass of humanity swarmed the field. And we ended up falling back to like one corner of the stadium and just had to let the crowd run wild for a while before we start pushing them off. At one point, some high-ranking individual got on the radio and said, there are unauthorized persons on the field. And we were looking around like, really?
Yeah.
Okay. All of that to say this. A girl got caught up in the crowd surge because there were people that got pushed to the field that did not want to go, but they couldn't help it. The crowd was pushing them. A college-age girl got pushed onto the field and she got trampled. She ended up with some brain injury and everything for it. Another fairly rookie officer with us, I want to say his first name, Danny. Danny threw himself on top of her as a human shield. This girl has been trampled. She's on the ground. The crowd's still coming over. Danny forms a human shield on top of her. Forrest Griffin straddled Danny and stood over top of him and threw haymakers and was laying people out right and left. And there are people to this day don't know that the light heavyweight champion of the world is who punched their lights out that night. It was like, I look over and all I can see is Forrest just haymaking, wham, wham, people just falling. And oh man. Oh gosh, we finally got that girl loaded on a gurney and got an ambulance into her and got her in the ambulance. And then we had to form a line and fight through the crowd, like throwing punches, kicking, throwing people out of the way to get the ambulance out to get her to the hospital. Okay. That wasn't somebody trying to rob us in a parking lot. That's one of my 3 favorite Forrest Griffin stories. I can tell maybe one other, and I can't tell the third ever in public.
Oh, icon.
I've been close friends with Forrest coach Adam for 25 years. Yeah. So I know a bunch of Forrest stories, and I'm not allowed to tell any of them.
Yeah. And the thing is that they're all true.
Yeah, exactly. You go, no, you're making this up. And he goes, no, I'm not. And then he'd call his brother, he'd call somebody else, and like, oh yeah, Forrest did that. Yeah, that happened.
All right, I got to tell 2 more. There's one I can't tell, but I got to tell 2 more. The agency had a minivan that had been purchased for the crime prevention unit. And the reason this was purchased because they could put all the mats and everything for the women's self-defense classes and everything in it, all the materials that they had to take to do presentations and everything in it. And they could haul them around in this van, this old Ford Aerostar minivan. Well, there was a bureaucratic rule that we could not get rid of a vehicle till it had 135,000 miles on it. And all this vehicle had done for years of its existence was haul stuff to like orientation and all that kind of stuff. And it had like 40,000 miles on it, and it's falling apart. And nobody can see past the administrative rule, this bureaucrat thing. No, you got to get it to 135,000 before you can get rid of it. It was outside of the agency. Well, my chief and everything saying it. And chief's like, sorry guys, you got to start driving it on patrol to get miles on it. Most of us would do everything we could do to keep from taking enforcement action driving this van because it was just too new. Forrest was bound and determined that he was going to arrest somebody and take them to jail. And we called it the goober van. That's what we call it. And Forrest made a DUI arrest in it one night and took someone to jail in the goober van. So there's someone out there that has been arrested and taken to jail in a minivan by the light heavyweight champion of the world.
That's too funny.
Probably down the road, he's watching UFC and goes, hey,
yeah,
that way.
Yeah. Oh, and then the only other one I'll tell on air, Forrest made a DUI arrest, and I came down to the station to run the intox machine for him because we had this thing, somebody else other than the arresting officer had to run the intox. And so I come and I'm setting up the intox, and Forrest is filling out paperwork. And the guy he's arrested is just sitting there staring at him like, I know you look familiar, kind of one of those stares. And finally he says to Forrest, he goes, you know what? I think I know you. And Forrest, without looking up, still filling out the paperwork, yeah, we were on the high school basketball team together. And just kept.
Nice.
And that's just a sampling. Yeah. Cecil, am I exaggerating a bit?
No. Every story I've ever heard about him from Adam has been pretty much along the same line.
Yeah.
Not worse.
Yeah. Because he probably knows some that when Forrest wasn't working as a cop that he can probably tell. So, yeah. Speaking, we got a whole network of things coming together. I met Adam in a William April class.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I talked to Adam after that. He was just blown away by what William was doing. It was like, it was the very transformative moment for him when he was like, because I think he had, before we talked self-defense stuff, but I think he had I think he looked down on it a little bit in the sense that, because most of the martial art guys who are super heavy into the street fighting and that kind of stuff tend to be either really psychotic or geeks. And so I think Adam just assumed that that was it. But when he saw what William was doing and talking about it, he was like, oh my God, this is truly amazing.
Yeah, I remember talking to Adam at class. I was like, so you got anything for a fat guy that's not really strong? And he goes, yeah, we make you less fat, we make you stronger.
Yeah, that's definitely Adam. That's definitely Adam for sure.
All right, the Combatives Association has an inaugural event upcoming. Tell
Yeah,
us about that event.
the summit, the Combatives Association Summit, really cool event. Some of us have been talking about this, trying to do something like this for years. I think Craig and I, and Paul and Larry and Chris, we threw this around 10 years ago. Wouldn't it be cool if we could do something like this? But the problem is it's kind of a daunting thing. Well, I don't know, a year ago, John Valentine decided it should happen. And he said, I'm going to devote time and energy, some of my own personal money to try to get this going. And he listened to input from all of us, but he was the driving force. And the idea is to gather all the people who've been doing this kind of thing, this integrated combatives methodology, who've been doing this for decades, as well as an upcoming generation, guys way younger than me, who are going to take it further, and then trying to kind of bring everybody together. And yeah, there's teaching and there's that kind of stuff, but part of it is sort of a internal thing where we talk to each other and we discuss, hey, what do you find? What do you think about this? What's your ideas on this? What do you find for training methodology? And some of us already do that, right? A bunch of the guys who are teaching, I know. The gym we're going to be at, Redbeard Combatives facility, I taught there a couple of years ago. And so I've known Ben for a couple of years. Cliff Brierly, I've known forever. John, I've known for a couple of years now. But there's a lot of guys who I'm not familiar with, and it's usually the younger guys. And the idea is almost, and I brought this up to John when he first broached the subject. I said, you know, this is kind of, or what it could be, not necessarily what it is, but it could be like the old Columbia conference, the Jeff Cooper, the Gunsight Columbia conference, or the Scout Rifle conference, where you bring these guys together and you kind of not codify a doctrine, but hey, what's our best practices right now? What can we agree on at this point, for the most part, for our core stuff that we agree is the best practices and the best practices of training it? And then at the same time, inviting students who are interested and trying to pass that on and build the next generation of people. So it's sort of this multifaceted thing, like this internal conference, but an external conference too with students. And I think it's going to work. You know, at first you're like, man, there's a lot, man, can we really do that? Can we really make it a double thing? But the way it's going, it's been pretty successful. It's sold out. The tickets, there's no more tickets available. It's completely sold out. And then John's continued to try to bring in other people. So along with Matt Larson, along with Craig Douglas, guys who've been doing it forever, he's bringing in Kelly McCann, who really, I would argue at some point is almost the godfather of everything that we're doing. I remember reading his articles, late 80s, early 90s, like in Guns and Ammo. What was his pen name guy? It wasn't Kelly McCann.
Jim Grover.
Yeah, Jim Grover, that's right.
Jim Grover.
Grover. And I remember going, this guy is speaking to how I understand things, shooting, hand to hand, all that kind of stuff. And he was doing it way before a lot of people. It was pre-internet. So there wasn't a lot of people talking about that. So Kelly was doing that. Oh man, I forget the guy's name. George guy, the Marine Corps, the guy who created the Marine Corps martial art program.
Colonel Bristol?
Yeah, George Bristol. So he's coming too, as sort of like him and Kelly McCann. They're actually, Kelly's actually going to teach a class, which wasn't the original plan, but he agreed to teach something. And then George's going to be there as a, again, like Matt Larson, there's this idea of the guys who've been doing it, and they're not, it's very democratic in the sense, it's not quite Colonel Cooper kind of lecturing to everybody. It's not quite like that, even though Craig would probably prefer it to be that way, with him, of course, being the Colonel Cooper position.
Of course.
Of course. But you still have guys like that as sort of like passing the torch almost, helping to pass the torch to the next generation, because honestly, I've got maybe 5 years left in me traveling, because it's hard. Man, I just turned 59. Man, I like traveling. Don't get me wrong. And I love teaching seminars. I love passing this on. But man, I'm finding that when I come home, my recovery is a lot longer than it was even a year, 2, 3 years ago. So I don't know. Craig's the same way. Larry's the same way. Paul, Chris is the baby of the collective, and he's still 53. So, and so we've got to make sure that I don't want this to die. I think we've done a lot of good work over the years, and not just us, but guys like Ben Oven and Cliff Marley, and of course, Matt Larson and those guys. I don't want it to die. I don't want there to be this thing to happen, and that people 20 years from now have to reinvent all this.
Yeah.
I like what Cooper did. I think what Cooper tried to do with this was, here's not doctrine, but here's where we're at, and let's go forward. So we can always go back to those writings. What happened? What were they saying? What came out of that? Okay, cool. How do we proceed from there? We don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I think that's what the summit really is trying to be. And to me, I think it's going to be that way. As daunting as it is, I think it's going to be that way. I mean, don't you agree, Guy, from what we've seen, where it goes, or where it was to where it's happening?
Yeah, I think this is going to be the foundation for the future of combatives. The association or the summit every year or every couple of years, seeing how the art, I guess, for lack of a better term, art is progressing, or combatives is progressing as we distill it into what we want it to be and what the future wants it to be. So it's going to be really good. I think for the people who are going to be there, they're going to get a lot of good material, even whether it's the lecture or the hands-on part or whatever. It's going to be really good.
And none of us agree on everything, right? We were talking before the show, even within the Rangemaster family, you guys don't agree on everything. But I think that's where the interesting part has. Okay, let's agree on 95, 96, 97%. And then let's throw out the other part. Well, I think this. So this other new guy, this newer generation guy, this 35-year-old kid comes up. Well, I've been seeing this. Okay, cool. Let's go from that and not just say, and not just rest on our laurels and just go, we have this institutional thing of, well, you got to be a jiu-jitsu purple belt, and you got to do this, and then it has to be like this, and you got to do ECQC like this. No, maybe somebody else comes along and goes, yeah, you guys did good, but here's where we're at now, kind of thing. And I would love nothing more than to see that next generation surpass what I've done, or if I've done anything, but where they take it even further. I don't want it to be, let's write this in stone and it has to be this way. Let's keep going. I'm friends with a bunch of the gun sight instructors like Freddie Blish and Eric Galhouse and stuff like that, and Ken Campbell. And it's interesting. They're doing everything to maintain Colonel Cooper's legacy, but they're not teaching everything exactly like it was in 1979. And I'd like the same thing to be said for integrated combatives. What's the next? Well, what's going to look like in 10 years? Because what we're teaching now, all of us, doesn't look like what it did in 2007. And I'd love to see in 15 years, 20 years from now, where are we at? And I think the summit might be, again, like the Columbia conference, maybe it's that touchstone to launch into that next step.
For those that are not familiar, the Columbia Conference is what
Mm-hmm.
spawned IPSC, and then ultimately in the US, USPSA. And then that went awry from the original foundation. And then the same people kind of spawned IDPA. And we could make an argument that it's kind of straying from its original purpose. Anytime something becomes a sport, it changes. But I had an epiphany the other day. And Cecil, I'm going to throw this out there to you, everything it just dawned on me that if I disagree with someone on, all this stuff, by definition, they're disagreeing with me.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And it's like, well, okay,
yeah.
there's some, if I disagree with what Guy is teaching, then Guy is also disagreeing with me.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, let's look at what we agree on.
Yeah, exactly. And let's stop worrying so much about fighting over the tiny little things that we disagree on. Let's put a little more time on, let's solidify the stuff that we agree on, because we know it's best practices. And there's always room for the little bits, right? Like when I certified Guy to teach my material, I said, I'm not expecting you to teach my material exactly like I taught it every single time. Do what you want with it. But I'm giving you my thumbs up that you're capable of doing that. Jiu-jitsu is the same way. I don't look like, and I don't roll and practice, and I don't have all the same exact philosophical things that my instructor has. Doesn't mean we're fighting,
right?
It's just I can have my thing, and he can have his and stuff. And I would like more of that, especially in the shooting community. We don't have to disagree on most stuff.
Yeah, one of the handful of handgun combatives certified instructors. When I teach a handgun combatives course, I don't do a Dave impersonation. I was like, this is me teaching the material as I learned it from Dave, but it's me presenting it with my understanding. I've taught a range master course where I was the lead instructor. And I said, guys, I'm not going to try to pretend to be Tom. I don't have his life experience and his things. And, there's a lot of stuff that Tom and I agree on. There's a lot of stuff that Dave Spalding and I agree on, but there's nuances and differences in the way we do it. I don't run a gun exactly like either one of them.
Right.
But that doesn't make it wrong. Brian Eastridge has been on this show numerous times, and Brian has his own show, the Off Duty, On Duty podcast. It's either Off Duty, On Duty, or On Duty, Off. Brian, you should have.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's one of
Brian's
those.
podcast. Brian with the Y. Brian's
is it Haney's? I thought it was Haney's podcast.
Yeah, Haney's
Mahmood's podcast that Brian is on.
Right.
Yeah, we allowed him to be on.
Yeah, and Brian was taking the range master instructor class. And like at a break or something, he calls me. He's like, hey, we were just doing a drill. Tom walked over, looked at me, looked at my target, nodded and walked off. What does that mean?
You're okay.
And I said, it meant you were competent and you were okay. And he moved on down the line to somebody else he could do. He's like, good, because I didn't do it exactly like he described it and everything, everything. But you did it to a acceptable level and whatever. Then we're not going to have a nuance over, argument over thumbs.
Right. Exactly.
And let's just move on. And we should be working on the concept that we're trying to get across more so than, and please say, I don't have the combatives background to speak the terminology, and I don't know it. Like I say, ACQC, complete combatant, Academy Chicken Wing, choked out by force. That's all I know. That's all I know. I'm sure there are arguments amongst you guys about certain technique for certain things.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I got to think there's got to be guiding principles that you all kind of, and concepts that you all kind of agree with. You might accomplish them differently,
Mm-hmm.
but there's got to be universal rules and concepts that you all follow.
Mm-hmm.
It's all, you see that in the combat sports, or what people
Mhm.
call the combat sports: boxing, Thai boxing, sabat, wrestling, judo, sambo, jiu-jitsu. Nobody, you take 5 boxing coaches, some, guys who boxing trainers, some of the guys produce the best boxers in the world, Customato, whatever. They're not going to agree on everything, but they're going to agree on the core principles are going to be the same. 5 random jiu-jitsu black belts. They're not going to agree on everything. They're not going to teach the same, but the core stuff is going to be there. The core concepts, ideas. And I think maturity and self-awareness is, hey, you're doing something different, but it's this tweak here. It's this technique done slightly different, but you're doing everything. You're doing that technique within this core idea. So it's legit. And I might not use your technique or your training method, but it's good and cool. I don't have to then say, well, you're violating the rules of the Shaolin Temple. You must be, kicked out, or some dumb stuff like that. It's very much core principles. And I think that's what the summit is trying to get across, is like,
Right.
let's hammer these out to where we all publicly go, yes, we're speaking the same language. We're agreeing on what we think are best practices for the most part. And then we all, when we walk away, we all have the right to say, but I like doing this. And then Craig goes, and I'll do this. And Cliff Byerly goes, I do this. And Guy will say this. There's nothing wrong with that. Like Tom's never once. Yeah, well, no, I say he yells at me all the time. But that's just because I usually am screwing something up and he needs to vent on somebody. So, and I'm an easy target. But he's never got into the weeds of like, Cecil, your thumb needs to be exactly like this, and your pinky needs to be shifted this way. It's what's the overall thing you're doing, Cecil?
I remember me yelling at you in a Rangemaster Shotgun instructor class.
Oh God.
When you were told which buckshot was best, and you had some sort of god awful stuff that smelled like a burnt horse as you're shooting it, and me yelling at you on the line, you were told. Cecil just sitting there just nodding. Yes, I was.
Yeah. and did I argue or fight with you at all? No. I did not.
Like, there's people I don't know, like standing in there like, why? What's going on down there? Why is he yelling at him? And why is he taking that?
Why is he taking it? Because you were right.
Like one of the preeminent firearms instructors in the world told you which buckshot to bring, and you brought that.
I went the Scottish background in my genetic makeup made me buy the whatever the European crap I bought, and I saved a whole $7 on the whole 500 rounds.
Guy had like a horsehair wadding.
S&B.
This thick cloud of black smoke every time he fired a shot.
Yes, it was S&B.
Oh
my
God!
So
I've been on the range with guys shooting that stuff. It's like, great.
Well, if the buckshot didn't kill him, the gas cloud did.
Yeah. the stink would just and I was shooting my 1301, so it's not the gun. But when 8 or 9 rounds are like here at 5 yards, you're kind of like, oh, this is going to be really hard to pass the final test shooting this crap. So, but Lee yelled at me, but then he gathered up 20 rounds of flight control and said, yeah, go save this for the test. I'm like, and I did.
All right. Guy, what do you have upcoming, and where can people find you? Any other final thoughts you guys need to on the combative stuff before we go to the wrap up?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Guy.
I think the combative summit is going to be great. I think everybody should be training combatives, but I'm biased. I really love the 0 to 5 foot range stuff. as far as what I got coming on, best way to find me is through Palisade Training Group, ptgtrainingllc.com. We've got several classes going on. In fact, I'm up in Pennsylvania right now with my partners, Steve Moses and Alan B. Teaching. We did pistol mounted optic today, and then we got church security class tomorrow and Saturday. That's one of our big bread and butter is a church security class, and then we do a home defense shotgun class, and then pistol mounted optics. And we got a couple other classes we'll do, like gunfighting in crowds, and which is an amalgamation of a lot of stuff we learn through Civil Works, and we put together ourselves and other 0 to 5 foot range. And then I have my own little company called DFW Defensive Training, where I'm right now. It started off to be hosting, and over the last year or so, it has turned into more being my coaching page and teaching page. So you can find me through DFW Defensive Training on Facebook and DFW Defensive on Instagram. I have a website, but I hate working on website. So it's really dated. I need to go update it. But yeah, those two areas is where you can find me, 2 locations you can find me.
All right, Cecil, any final thoughts on the combative stuff, and where can people find you? This is the part, Cecil, where like you tell people actually where they can find your business.
I'm getting
how they
it.
can
I'm
come give you
getting it.
money.
It's sinking in. It's sinking in. I'm really looking forward to the summit. I love the idea, as a martial art and fighting combatives nerd. I love the idea of the Columbia Conference, the Scout Rifle Conference, all those kind of things, and to try to not recreate it, that's the wrong term, but to try to follow that model with this integrated combatives thing. It just excites me. The fact that maybe the future of all this is going to be secure and there's going to be pathways. I just love that idea so much. So I think the summit's going to be fun. I'm certainly looking forward to it. There's guys like I've been on podcasts and I've messaged with Matt Larson, but I've never met him face to face. I mean, man, what can he teach me? So much stuff. So I'm looking forward to that just from a selfish point of view. People can find me. You can go iacombatives.com. It's my webpage. And again, I'm like guy, to WordPress. I'm doing the minimal I can to keep things updated. So I try to put blog articles up and at least my seminar schedule. Or you can go to my Facebook or Instagram or YouTube is Immediate Action Combatives. None of those are monetized, so you don't have to deal with a lot of commercials and stuff. Everybody tells me, hey, you got so many subscribers, you should do this. I'm like, no, I don't feel beholden to, I don't want to be beholden to, oh, I've got to churn out another video. I put out video that I think's worthwhile. And I'm not going to stress myself out. If I'm, like last night, I was at the academy at 8:30 in the morning. I walked in the door last night at 9:45 at night. I'm not carving out time in the middle of the day. Oh, I got to do this 5-minute video for YouTube because people are paying for it. But you can go to any of those and see some of the videos I've got on the YouTube channel. I've got like a 10-part video series on what I consider my foundational material on the ground. And it's just it's literally everything I teach on the basics of what I teach on the ground. So if people like it, then they can come check me out. You can do iacombatives.com or my Facebook page. Where else? Oh, and my academy, again, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, North Phoenix. And again, we've got a Facebook page for that too. But again, we're not the best. My partner and I are not the best at putting stuff up the way we should. We're too busy teaching and training. Imagine that. What I got coming up, I'm teaching my immediate action combative stuff in Tacoma or outside Seattle in October. I've got 2 classes. There are 2 iterations of my class that I teach with Daryl Bulkey and Chuck Haggard. Non-permissive counter robbery, MPE counter robbery, which I think is a really cool course. I really like that a lot. I think it's very useful. So we got 1st of September, we're in Escondido, and then in October, it's outside Fort Worth. I can't think of it.
Range 35.
Range 35, and it's just
it's south of Fort Worth. Is it not Granbury?
Something like that.
Grandview?
Yeah, Grandview.
Grandview, yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. I like teaching that class. I like teaching with Daryl and Chuck. That's fun. I kind of like this year on my seminars. I'm kind of shifting a lot to 24 just because I had to keep, open the academy, get it going, make sure that that's a viable, profitable thing. So now that we're kind of cruising along well, that 24, I'll start getting back onto the seminar gig and start doing stuff. I'll probably be in North Carolina, Apache, Tim Kelly's group, Apache
Training
Apache
Solutions.
Solutions.
Yeah, Apache Solutions.
Yep.
Yeah, they're hosting me probably in mid-January. So I'll have a lot more in 24, but the website will have all that information here soon. But yeah, come check me out. NPE, I think it's a great class. Check it out in Lacey, Washington for IAC, and just want to hit me up and just say I'm an idiot and you thought this was the worst podcast since the last time Hearn was on. Go ahead and email me. Pow, pow, pow. He thought he was going to make it through an entire Lee Weems show and not get hammered.
Yeah. What was bad was when he came on the most recent time, he Hearned himself.
Yeah, it was great. It was great.
Yeah, the Apache Solutions guys are in Yadkinville, which is just north of Charlotte. Just go straight up I-77.
Yep.
45 minutes or so, maybe an hour north of Charlotte.
Yeah.
As far as the MPE counter robbery class, there are 2 prior episodes of the number one podcast that's recorded in my kitchen. There are 2 prior episodes. There's one where they talked about the class upcoming, and then we did one where we had a panel of students on. So if you are interested in that, go back and listen to those 2 episodes and give you a good foundation.
Yes, raise those numbers above all of Hearn's episodes. So please re-download those.
There you go. September the 23rd, I have a trigger management class in Cisco, Georgia, which is up near Dalton, Georgia, which is near Chattanooga, Tennessee, for reference. That class had nobody signed up for the longest time, and I thought we were going to have to cancel it. And all of a sudden, it's started going to the point I'm looking like, ooh, maybe
I got that I have the same thing with both of the MPE classes. It's been the same way. It's been very slow, and then all of a sudden, as we're getting closer, people are signing up.
And then the last weekend in October, I think it's the 28th and 29th, but whatever the last weekend in October is, I have Red Hill Range, which is in Martin, Georgia, which is take a left just before you get to South Carolina if you're going up I-85. I have Red Hill Range reserved, and I am doing an instructor camp focusing on the topic of interleaving. And that's a training method that I've become very much interested in. I've seen some great results in my own practice regimen by doing it. And so what we're going to do on the first day of that is I'm going to give you a short classroom block on interleaving, and then we're going to go to the range, and I'm going to run you through a series of interleaved drills where I'm going to teach you why we're doing those. And it's something on that just activated my Siri, what I just said.
I found this.
That's great.
That was interesting. And I can't make it
great.
stop. All right. So I've never had that happen in the middle of
That's cool.
everything. So classroom session followed by a range session where I'll run you through a group of drills that I have either developed or selected to teach the whole concept of interleaving and how it all works together. And then we're going to go back to the classroom, and you're going to start working on developing your own or selecting. You can take a drill that someone else has done, interleaving drill, and we're going to plan that out. And then all the second day is all of the other students are now your students, and you get to run the drill that you develop or select with them as your audience, but you have to explain why you selected it, what you're trying to teach and accomplish. You get to run a line of students through drills because, a lot of the firearms instructors, they teach one-on-one lessons. They don't get a lot of experience from running a line until they actually get out doing classes. Okay, well, here's a non-threatening environment, a supportive environment to come. If you screw up, we're going to keep you from running off the cliff. Come get a chance to run a line where you're not doing it in front of a paid group of students. You're not trying to sell anything. Come run the lines, do this stuff, and run through your drills. You'll pick up stuff that the other students develop and select and come up with. And what our goal is that participants go away with more confidence in running running a line, that they understand the concept, and that they leave with a pocket full of drills and teaching points that they can go back and intermix into their students, their teaching curriculum. I got to tell you, when I found out, started studying this concept and really started putting it together, it really helped me finally grasp how to run the dot on top of a gun.
No, but you hate the
And
dot. How is that possible? You
yeah,
hate the
I hate it.
Yeah,
And
you're
so,
anti-dot.
I really think that now I can take you in a short amount of time, show you some things on the presentation, and then start running you through some of these drills, and I can shortcut your path to learning how to run the dot.
Yep.
You got to be some sort of instructor to come to the thing. Range master, handgun
Mm.
combatives, a law enforcement, something like that to get in. And that's just basically so I don't have people showing up that I got to teach how to draw a pistol.
Interesting.
It's just a screening mechanism for this, but it's going to be a very much an interactive learning environment. You'll probably end up teaching as much as you end up learning, and I'm really excited about it. Nobody has signed up yet, so
Yeah, but that's the market now. Everybody's
yeah.
waiting till the last minute, though.
Right.
Mhm.
Financially, I am not doing myself any favors, because I would make much more money running 2 one-day classes on the range that I have it reserved, because the price that I set for this thing includes all the range fees.
Ooh.
I'm providing target. Now, if you have something specific you want, bring it. But I'm renting the steel. I'm bringing my own steel. I'm renting the range of steel. Bringing a vast supply of targets, all that kind of stuff, so that you can go look at it and select what you want to do. Everything else. And
So basically, you're saying you're not a businessman. Is basically what you're saying.
Right.
I went to the Cecil Burch School of Business, and
That explains it now.
and I got whatever is lower than an associate's degree from it. So, which is the highest degree they grant. And speaking of degrees, I did something foolish today.
What's
I
that?
applied to go back to graduate school for another
Oh, good Lord.
another run.
You are a glutton for punishment.
Yeah.
It's this third, fourth master's you're working on now?
I have a master's. This will be a graduate certificate program in adult education.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
I just wanted to combine some study and kind of doing it as a memorial to my daddy.
Oh, that's cool. That's
You
great.
Is what it is.
Like it.
Mhm.
Like
And
that.
one of the things he always told me was, if he ever learned how to read and write, and tell him what he could have accomplished. And and so that's one of the he's always pushed us into
Mhm.
education and stuff. And
Mhm.
he was a trainer in the military, retired as a corporate trainer. And it's like, I was kind of, wanted to do something and got to look at this. I actually wrote a recommendation for someone we all know to get into the program.
Oh,
And I kept looking.
it better not have been Hearn. If it's
No.
Hearn, no, we got a problem.
No. And I kept looking at the program and looking at the program and looking at it. And it's like, you know what? Rather than just going and buying something, or I'm going to do something that would have mattered to him.
Oh, that's cool.
And,
I like that.
It's awesome.
I like that.
So, and it keeps me from staring at my walls, because I'll be too busy to stare at my walls. I'll be looking at a computer screen. So, yeah, like I needed something else to do with 3 jobs and
Right. Exactly.
else. But so sign up for instructor camp interleaving. The last
What was the
weekend in
date?
October.
What was the dates on that one again?
The last weekend in October.
Okay.
So it'll be
Okay.
great weather in North Georgia. Yeah.
Is there ever great weather?
The last weekend in October probably is about it. Yeah.
The 1 week. The 1 week.
Yeah. Yeah, we get that in like 1 weekend in April, and that's it. Martin, Georgia is halfway between Atlanta and Greenville. So fly into Atlanta, fly into Greenville, South Carolina. And you can get there in an hour or so from each place, depending on Atlanta traffic. And yeah. So
Mhm.
that's what I've got scheduled for the rest of the year. We have by the time this episode plays, the Range Master reunion will be over. So there's no need in talking about
Yep.
it. But that's all what's coming up. And guys, I
All right.
appreciate you coming on tonight.
I
As
appreciate
always.
you giving us the opportunity to mouth off and talk about stuff that we love,
Yes.
and make fools of ourselves. So it's good.
Well, yeah. Well, the bonus
Thank
is you got to pick on her. So
Which is great. I'll move heaven and earth to get a chance to do that.
and
Thank
but
you.
I appreciate you guys taking the time to come on tonight. I know you've both been on numerous times before, and I always appreciate you guys taking the time to come on. And to the audience, we know that your most important asset is your time. Thank you for choosing to spend it with us.